ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما اللهم أرنا حقيقة الأشياء كما هي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين يا رب العالمين Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We covered, I think, pretty much half of Surah Al-An'am yesterday, or a little less than half. And we're going to continue from there today. One of the flavors that we would have gotten, this is our first reading of a Meccan, of an elaborate or a longer Meccan surah. And we've already, I hope, seen and appreciated how the themes have, what sort of themes are being picked up. And even this is general experience in Taraweeh, or when you listen to recitation, you will usually be able to pick up as to when a Meccan surah is being recited versus when a Madani surah is being recited from the flow of the recitation. Meccan surahs tend to have shorter ayat, more rhythmic, although An'am would be still longer of the Meccan surahs. Moving right along, we said that there's two types of reminders that come in Meccan surahs most typically. And one of them have to do with the ala illa. These are actually Shawaliullah rahimahullah's differentiations, distinctions or categories. Tazkir bi ala illa, tazkir bi ayyamillah. Ala illa being the ayats in the universe, and ayyamullah being the ayats in history, the days of Allah. So far we have seen, and we will see more in An'am with respect to ala illa, the ayats in the universe. As for the ayyamullah are concerned, we will see a mention here of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but then that's pretty much it. The rest of the prophets are taken up in more detail in the next surah, in Surah A'raf, right? And that's going to be something of a pattern that we're going to see. Okay, so Ibrahim alayhi salam, the particular aspect of his seerah that is brought out is when he is going around with his people, among his people. Now there's two opinions that are generally put out there, that this is a journey that Ibrahim alayhi salam is journeying himself, that as a young man in his polytheistic society, where his father, all his relatives, pretty much everyone there, every kind of shirk that you can conceive of is prevalent in that society. It's a very, 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 very polytheistic society. It's everything is God. Everything has the potential of being God, right? Everything is worshipped as a God. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam is opening his eyes with all of these different options for worship, and he's reflecting. So one possibility is this is his personal journey, that he is entertaining these different options, testing them out. Does it make sense? And then coming to a conclusion. Number two, this is conceived of as him having reached a decision already being a muwahhid, a follower of Tawheed, and this is him walking his people one by one through a demonstration that what you hold on to doesn't make sense. And this is how, right? So either of these two readings are possible from this particular passage. And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ آزَرَ. When Ibrahim said to his father, Azar, أَتَتَّخِذُ أَصْنَامًا آلِهَةً. Are you going to take idols, or do you take idols as gods? إِنِّي أَرَاكَ وَقَوْمَكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. I find you, as well as your people, most definitely lost. So first up, the idol worship in terms of the stone idols that they were worshiping. First, there his point of skepticism, and he's like, this is way off. And actually not just skepticism, but outright rejection. These are not gods. I can't accept them. This looks like inni araka wa qawmaka fi dalalin mubin. Now their dalal, or their misguidance, in two ways. One, in the practice of idol worship itself, and then how the worshiping of idols and their general conduct in society, the general conduct is misguided, misled, right? It's all over the place. It's exploitative, unjust, immoral. And so the idol worship does not seem to be affecting that positively in any way, right? So overall misguidance in the practice of polytheism, and then misguidance in a social conduct, which in itself is an evidence against the validity of idol worship, or its influence, the positive influence that it's supposed to have in the society. وَكَذَلِكَ نُرِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ مَلَكُوتَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And that is how we showed Ibrahim the realms of the heavens and the earth. So from here, he goes on to the world of nature. And the wording here seems to suggest, when Allah is saying that we showed Ibrahim, so it seems to be a personal journey. That Allah is showing Ibrahim the malakut of samawat wal ard, and he is considering them for his own self, وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ, so that he joins the firm believers, so that he becomes of the firm believers. Again, suggesting that he is not already there, that this is his journey, his process has started. Now, one of the reasons why we are more inclined to not accepting that this is a process, that this is not a journey, or that Ibrahim alayhi salam already had all the conclusions figured out, and he was from day one the perfect muwahhid. Again, we like to conceive of guidance as something that you just get, as something that you just pick up, this monolithic entity that you just have to proclaim. It is very simple to the point of being simplistic, and you just have it. Prophets have it from day one. They were born on fitrah. Everyone's born on fitrah. Yes, we're born on fitrah, but the understanding of fitrah, or how fitrah expresses itself for a child, and how with the intellectual, spiritual development of a person in his life, how that expression changes, how the fitrah would find different manifestations, should find different manifestations. Why is that lost on us? Why are we so against the process that this is and should be, that all of us have to undergo? Again, because the process is long, because the journey is tiring, because the journey is demanding, because the journey is dangerous, the journey is risky. You can slip, you can fall, you can get off track. In fact, to appreciate the track, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, experiences of what is not the Sirat al-Mustaqim have a very important role to play. And anything can happen on those experiences. Our insistence that no, it was just, he had it, he kept it, and we should just get it and keep it, and that's it. That وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ. So he becomes those of conviction, so that he becomes one of the people himself. It's speaking of him in the singular. There is a journey, there is a process. We have to undergo it. We will falter in its course. We should be looking to grow in this process. Growth is not going to happen with a waving of a wand or the recitation of a few words. Or if whatever growth happens with the recitation of a few words, that's not the end of the journey. Why do we want the journey to have already ended? Why this cop out? Why this refusal to accept the responsibility of carrying the burden for a long distance and for experiencing different experiences, for all kinds of encounters along the path? It's why do we want this facade of certainty to just the perfection that we have already attained? Why is that so much of a, why is that coveted so strongly? Precisely because it's maintaining a sense of security, because it maintains, it offers a protection from continuous effort, from risk, from discovery, from novelty, from newness. It offers protection against the risks of getting things wrong. And getting things wrong is something we don't want to associate with ourselves. The humility of khata'a, being khata'un, those who make a lot of mistakes, that doesn't fall well with us. We want to be perfectionists. And for that reason, so many of us preclude genuine growth by creating this delusion of having attained ultimate guidance years back. And so many in intellectual potential, so many as spiritual potential, so many as social potential is utterly lost when we conceive of guidance in that way. When we conceive of Tawheed in that way, in such simplistic of a way of looking at it, where it is a dogma or a creed and nothing more, not a genuine relationship. A genuine relationship, it's a journey. It has highs and lows. It has all kinds of emotions. And that's another reason why we want to deny the process and the journey, because we want to deny the emotions. We want to guard ourselves against the distress of all the emotions that are part and parcel of the journey. It's a very painful journey, psychologically speaking. It is marred with fear, with grief. And it is so much easier to rid yourself of it, to build these walls against the fear and the grief by just saying, I already have it. I have my paradise. I got my tree of knowledge. I have the forbidden fruit is in my possession. And one of the understandings of what the forbidden fruit or the tree of knowledge, the shajara mamnu'a of Adam alayhi salam, what it represents is absolute knowledge. And we'd like to think that we have absolute knowledge. And this selfishness of wanting to have that absolute knowledge, or deceiving ourselves into thinking that we have absolute knowledge, in the belligerent rejection of others as it manifests itself in our interactions, which the self-deceiving disclaimers of, I don't know everything, or I may be wrong here. One sentence of, attesting to the very obvious and very um, undeniable human weakness or human ignorance. But then, after that one sentence, the entire paragraph or everything that follows from there is representative of belligerent certainty and rejection of any other conception of truth outside of yourself. That's convenient. And that's devastating in what it results in. So much truth comes in front of a person, and because they've already attained their paradise, their tree of knowledge is, they're holding onto it tight, they're unable to see it. وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ, so that he becomes, joins the firm believers, those with conviction. فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلِ, so when the night grew dark, رَأَى كَوْكَبًا, he saw a star. قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي, he said, this is my Rabb. فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ, and when the star set, قَالَ لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ, he said, I don't like those who disappear. This star is going to be my deity. Its limitations have already become apparent to me. It is subject to certain fixed patterns. सितारा क्या मेरी तकदीर की खबर देगा, वो तो खुद फराखी अफलाक में है खारो ज़ुबूं. This, I can't put it on a pedestal. I attach myself, and we've done that. We do that to star-like stuff. When the patterns of movements in the stars and in the heavens are absolute determinants of our behaviors. That sort of fatalism. Again, escape from responsibility, subjugation for that which is weaker than you, which does not have the freedom that you as a human being possess. And when he found the moon shining, قال هذا ربي, he said, this is my Rabb. فلما أفل, but then when it also set, قال لئن لم يهدني ربي, so he said, if my Rabb does not guide me, again, the one, when he's saying Rabb, he is looking for someone or the one, the creator, the nurturer, the one who brought him into being, the one who brought everything into being, to form a genuine relationship with. He is despaired of the idols. Now he's looking to the world of nature. The moon doesn't make sense either. It was bigger than the star, but then the same patterns that it's bound to. قال لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم الضالين. I'll be of the people who are lost. فلما رأى الشمس بازغة, and now when he saw the sun shining brightly, new contender for the post of a deity. قال هذا ربي هذا أكبر. He said, this is my Rabb, this is bigger. فلما أفلت, but when the sun also set, قال يا قوم إني بريء مما تشركون. He said, my people, I have nothing to do with all that you associate with Allah. I tried it all. I gave it a serious consideration. Don't you think beyond just simply accepting it doesn't work out? Inni wajjahtu wajhiya. I, with full attention, turn my face لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ حَنِيفًا. I am exclusively dedicating myself to the one who created the heavens and the earth. وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And I am not at all of the mushrikeen. Those that, as grand as they may be, as awesome as they may be, the awesomeness in its own place, their grandeur not rejected. How great the sun is, no doubt about that. How awesome the moon is, how brilliant the stars are, no problem with that. But having observed their limitations, having observed the fixed patterns that they're bound by, he has to be more than that. My Rabb has to be more than that. My Rabb is other than that. My Rabb is outside of that. And again, that opens up doors to complicated discussions, but nevertheless, very simply put, he is not this expression that I see, that I can capture with my senses. وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَحَاجَّهُ قَوْمُهُ. And his people started arguing with him. قال, he said, أَتُحَاجُّونِي فِي اللَّهِ وَقَدْ هَدَانِي. And he said, are you arguing with me about Allah? And Allah has guided me. وَلَا أَخَافُ مَا تُشْرِكُونَ بِهِ. I do not fear those whom you associate with him. إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ رَبِّي شَيْئًا. They can't harm me. Whatever you're threatening that they will do to me, that my rejection of them is going to bring me some harm in my life, I'm not afraid of that. Except if my Rabb wills something, وَسِعَ رَبِّي كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. My Rabb encompasses everything in knowledge. أَفَلَا تَتَذَكَّرُونَ. So don't you remember? Don't you receive admonition? There's some level of tazkir, there's some resonance with the conception of Allah. From within, something strikes, something makes sense. From within, the best possible explanation of whatever facts of observation in front of you, and then that on top of an intuitive recognition. That's who I'm going for. It rather than whatever it is that you're calling me to, the shortcomings of which practically as well as conceptually I've already seen. وَكَيْفَ أَخَافُ مَا أَشْرَكْتُمْ. And your methodology or your defense of keeping me to your fixed understandings, your fixed beliefs, is the threats that you're leveling against me, that I am going to be smitten by some calamity. But isn't suffering generally a part of life, whether you commit to these idols or you don't? What sort of an understanding, what sort of an emotional blackmail is this, that you commit to a deity to avoid suffering, which is an inevitability in your life as it is? And then when that inevitable suffering does result, you associate this with one idol or the other, you having displeased them in one way or the other, you having been punished by them, and now there's something or the other that you have to do to appease them, which if the suffering goes away, the appeasement worked, which if it doesn't, you just didn't do it right. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't strike me as all that consistent. My Rabb is beyond all of that. This has to be he's my Rabb. His ilm is greater than that. It encompasses everything. And there is something inside. Tazkir is always a reminder. There is something that it clicks, it resonates with inside. وَكَيْفَ أَخَافُ مَا أَشْرَكْتُمْ. And how can I fear those whom you associate with Allah? Again, the emotional blackmail, the threats that start coming in, Ibrahim alayhi salam is being stricken with those. It's like, I'm not going to fear all of these other than Allah. How can I? وَلَا تَخَافُونَ أَنَّكُمْ أَشْرَكْتُمْ بِاللَّهِ. You don't fear, you're not afraid of having associated with Allah. You go on doing your shirk with all the audacity and gall, and you expect me to be afraid of your stones, your rocks, your sun, moon, and star? You're not afraid of Allah. مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ عَلَيْكُمْ سُلْطَانًا. For which he has not sent down to you any authority, any sanction. That for the deification of anything, if anything is ultimately and absolutely divine and worthy of worship, there has to be some evidence. I don't see any. فَأَيُّ الْفَرِيقَيْنِ أَحَقُّ بِالْأَمْنِ. So which of the two parties deserves to feel secure? You or me? Submitting to Allah, submitting to the deities. If Aman is sought, the security, that it comes with the one who is the giver of ultimate security, the Rabb. In kuntum ta'lamun, if you really know. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِظُلْمٍ. Those who believe and do not pollute their belief with zulm. Having believed in Allah is not enough. The possibility of that belief being mixed up with zulm, mixed up with shirk. Inna shirka la zulmun azim. Subtle forms of shirk, where especially the kind in which there is no explicit idolatry going on, with an idol with a face and a name, but it's idolatry nevertheless, for it's having the same effects in your person, in your life, in your society, as idolatry would. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ الْأَمْنُ. It is they, these are the people who attain security. These are the people who attain the amn, the peace. وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. And these are the people, they're going to be the rightly guided ones. The ones who have the iman without the dhulm. وَتِلْكَ حُجَّتُنَا آتَيْنَاهَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِ. And that was our argument. We provided Ibrahim against his people. So Ibrahim alayhi salam and what makes him stand out from all the prophets, the ayat that he's bringing in, they're more to do with the reasoning that he brings out, the inconsistencies that he brings out in the practice of his people, in the thought of his people. Whenever Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned, you will see him engaging the people in dialogue. You will see him engaging the people, showing the people the limitations of their understanding and how those limitations do not apply to what he is calling them towards. نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَنْ نَشَاءُ. We exalt in ranks whoever we want to. And this is groundbreaking, revolutionary, as far as the history of humanity is concerned. For now on, after this journey of one person, humanity is going to swerve in a very different direction than from where it was headed before. Ibrahim alayhi salam's process, Ibrahim alayhi salam's engagement with his people, his legacy, how his reflection, and then the practice that his reflection resulted in. How Allah accepts that to be the path that the rest of humanity is to build on, is to follow. And so prophethood itself becomes exclusively an aspect of Ibrahim alayhi salam's progeny. Inna rabbaka hakimun alim, and your Rabb is wise and knowing. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. And so we gifted him with Ishaq and Ya'qub. كُلًّا هَدَيْنَا. We guided each of them. وَنُوحًا هَدَيْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. And we had guided Nuh before them. Before Ibrahim alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam. وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِهِ داود وسليمان وأيوب ويوسف وموسى وهارون. And from his offspring, Dawood, Sulaiman, Ayyub, Yusuf, Musa, and Harun. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And that is how we reward those who achieve excellence. Ibrahim's excellence, him not the freedom that he gave himself or that Allah gives everyone that He chose to exercise in the face of his father and his community's opposition, to think, to reason independently of their blackmail, and how that is a practice of ihsan. And the reward for that is this incredible lineage of prophets. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. How do you become the father of such incredible human beings, the most incredible human beings ever? It was Ibrahim alayhi salam's commitment to the truth, which wasn't just, I mean, the phrase has become so much of a cliche. Commitment to the truth and searching for the truth. And but with him, we see how much he's willing to do for it, what internal and external obstacles he's willing to overcome, what stands he's willing to take, what risks he's willing to take. وزكريا ويحيى وعيسى وإلياس كل من الصالحين. Zakaria, Yahya, Isa, Ilyas, all of them from the righteous. Ibrahim alayhi salam's practice and how the phrase, and this is going to, again, something that we see in the Meccan Quran quite a lot, a prophetic practice is highlighted, is appreciated, and the reward is mentioned. And then Allah says, this is how we reward the people of ihsan, i.e., something of this reward or this practice of Allah, this habit of Allah of rewarding, this is not restricted to Anbiya, this is not restricted to Rusul, this is a practice of Allah with respect to Muhsineen, and the door to Ihsan is open. The door to Ihsan is not closed. It is not an exclusive prophetic privilege only. It is for all humanity. وإسماعيل واليسع ويونس ولوطا وكلا فضلنا على العالمين. We favor all of them over the whole world. The preference that Allah gave these great individuals. وَمِنْ آبَائِهِمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِهِمْ وَإِخْوَانِهِمْ, and from their forefathers, children and brothers too. وَاجْتَبَيْنَاهُمْ وَهَدَيْنَاهُمْ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. We chose them and guided them to a straight path. The possibilities that this exercise of Ibrahim alayhi salam opened up for his future generation, and the expression that it found in these incredible human beings. ذَلِكَ هُدَى اللَّهِ. That is Allah's guidance. That's how Allah rewarded Ibrahim alayhi salam. That is how Allah's guidance manifests itself transgenerationally. It's not just limited to the individual and the effects that that individual has in his or her immediate surroundings. It becomes a legacy. It becomes eternalized. يَهْدِي بِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ. He guides through it whoever from his ibad that wants it. Whoever, if you really have that fervor, if you really have that commitment, that chahat, Allah says, whoever really wants it, we give it to him. Whoever really wants it, we give it to him. And from now on, up until now, we've always said that this phrasing can be translated both ways. That Allah guides, or Allah guides whoever Allah wants to. But it has legitimately been translated the other way as well. We've only chosen to go the former in our running translations, that it's Allah guides whoever Allah wants. But Allah guides whichever individual wants to be guided. I'm going to try that from now on. The running translation chooses option number 2. وَلَوْ أَشْرَكُوا, and had they committed shirk, had the prophets, any of them, committed shirk, لَحَبِطَ عَنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. All of what they had done would have become worthless. There you go. So they had the freedom to do shirk. They had the opportunity, the possibility was very open, even for them. Prophets, not puppets. And their greatness in choosing the higher road, the better path, making the right choices. And so their greatness. أولئك الذين آتيناهم الكتاب والحكم والنبوة. These are the ones from whom we blessed with scripture, wisdom, and prophethood. فَإِن يَكْفُرْ بِهَا هَؤُلَاءِ. So if these people, these Quraysh, also disbelieve in these ayat, فَقَدْ وَكَّلْنَا بِهَا قَوْمًا, then we have entrusted to another people. This is an announcement of sorts, that the Quraysh have been given repeated opportunities. They're not listening. Look outside of Mecca. And Allah has made his choice. For where outside of Mecca this privilege can go to. The Ansar, possibly by the time of these ayat, the pledges have taken place. At least one of them, the pledge of Aqaba, where a group of Aus and Khazraj have come and heard Rasulullah ﷺ and have responded to him positively. Possibly that has already happened, which this phrase is referring to. فَقَدْ وَكَّلْنَا بِهَا قَوْمًا. So we have entrusted to another people. Again, a sunnah of Allah. Your opportunity to respond to the message of Allah and it's not going to remain eternally at your disposal, indefinite future. Just, it's sitting at your doorstep. Pick it up whenever you want to. No. Allah is going to knock on your door, give you that opportunity. You don't respond once, twice, thrice, repeatedly. He says, enough is enough. Go to hell. I'm going to take this somewhere else. As an individual, somebody else can do it. As a collective nation, somebody else can do it. Allah's not racist like that. It is just he's exclusively dependent on one people to carry his meaning forward. If they don't respond, they don't respond. He will give them fair chance, more than a fair chance. But then there is a limit. فَقَدْ وَكَّلْنَا بِهَا قَوْمًا لَيْسُوا بِهَا بِكَافِرِينَ. They're not going to disbelieve in it. They're not going to be ungrateful for it. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ. These are the people whom Allah guided. Just the way he guided Ibrahim alayhi salam. He has picked out from the Aus and the Khazraj as well. فَبِهُدَاهُ مُقْتَدِهِ. So follow their guidance. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. Say, Ya Rasulullah, I do not demand any compensation from you for this. The message that I am portraying, giving to you, me asking you to believe in me as a prophet of God, I am not asking for my personal privilege in the society financially to be elevated in any way. Rasulullah ﷺ was very careful, very, very careful. He took this so seriously, to the effect that when he was on a camel and his stick would fall down and a Sahabi would go forth to pick it up and give it to him, Rasulullah would forbid him, no, I'm going to do it myself. You are not my minions. I have not hired you, or I have not enslaved you for my personal service. That's not what this is. So in any way, the leader of the movement that this was turning out to be was the most giving and sacrificing. If anything, his investment in the cause was the greatest. And any personal, very, very personal gain, there was no evidence for it. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was poorer than when he started out his prophethood. When at 40 years of age, with the business that Khadija had made his, radiallahu ta'ala anha, he was one of the more influential, one of the more wealthy people of Arabia. And he did not have that ever again in his life, even when Khaybar opens up. Even when Khaybar opens up, when all the believing community becomes wealthy, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family does not. He does not leave an inheritance. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He never pays zakah. Never had enough. Never had enough. No one can point fingers and say that, see, and you can say that pretty much about every single politician you talk about who has been reasonably successful in his politics. And when there is a political dimension to the spiritual cause that you represent, all the more reason that your finances are completely transparent, so that there is no doubt or no possibility of doubt as to any vested personal vendetta or before vendetta. I mean, I say vendetta because typically when you look at somebody from a who was not of a ruling class, when they are leading what would be looked at as a rebellion, then there is vengeance that can be picked out in the words, in the achievements, that it would typically be a movement of the poor people looking to overthrow, undermine, and take revenge from the people of privilege. We don't see that at all with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No personal interest, no financial interest, no vendettas. لا أسألكم عليه أجرا. I don't ask any compensation from you for this. إن هو إلا ذكرى للعالمين. This is nothing but a reminder for all the worlds. وما قدر الله حق قدره. People did not appreciate Allah as was his right to be appreciated. When they ascribed all of these limitations to him, what did Ibrahim alayhi salam do? He understood the qadr of Allah. The qadr in the sense of his worth, his worthiness. And so Allah reciprocated by elevating his worth, elevating Ibrahim alayhi salam's worth. وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ إِذْ قَالُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَى بَشَرٍ مِّن شَيْءٍ. When they say Allah did not send down anything to a man. And interestingly enough, this was always said, and any sort of understanding or any sort of belief that looks to transcend God, that looks to make God very, 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 very transcendent to the point of exalting him so high that his involvement in the mundane affairs of the world, the routine affairs of humanity, is either a formality or not there at all. As for the Quraysh, the greatness of, they believed in Allah. Allah was the supreme God for them as well. But he was so supreme, he was so transcendent, he was so exalted that there was no possibility of any sort of communication or access or interaction. Forget about him sending anything to you, you having a dua access to him, no. Too transcendent, too great. You too petty, too small, too inferior, too impure to reach out to him. And so in their head, these dogmas, these theological understandings, they're exalting his greatness. Allah says, no. Keep your exaltations to yourself. Allah chooses to exalt himself through relationship, not through isolation. And the greatest manifestation of that revelation of the Quran, which, mind you, is a risk for when revelation is carried out, or when revelation is revealed, when there's a prophet, when there's people who hear the revelation, will that revelation always be respected? Will that revelation always be honored, loved, responded to? For the most part, it won't. For the most part, it will be blasphemed against. But he did that. His exaltation is in his immanence, in his involvement, in his concern, in his love. So when they say قالوا ما أنزل الله على بشر من شيء, they're not exalting his qadr, they're not appreciating him for his greatness. Allah takes that as an insult. إذ قالوا ما أنزل الله على بشر من شيء, when they say Allah did not send down anything to a man. قل من أنزل الكتاب الذي جاء به موسى. Ask them who revealed the book which Musa brought. نورا وهدى للناس, as a light and a guidance for mankind. تجعلونه قراطيس, you have written it on separate sheets. You have that with you in your midst. Do you see the resemblance? Do you see the continuity between that and what Rasulullah is bringing to you? Does this continuity not speak of the unity of the source from where this book is coming? What relationship does Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have to the Yahud? What interactions? And yet you see the continuity. The relationship is spiritual. If there is anything of lineage that is separated by so many generations, it's inconceivable that he has picked up on it on his own, independent of any divine intervention, of Allah's involvement. تجعلونه قراطيس تبدونها وتخفون كثيرا. You've written it on separate sheets, disclosing some of it and hiding a lot of it. وَعُلِّمْتُم مَا لَمْ تَعْلَمُوا أَنْتُمْ وَلَا آبَاؤُكُمْ. And you were taught what you and even your forefathers never knew. Just this legacy, the phenomena of knowledge. Scriptural, yes, for sure, definitely. Perhaps in this ayah primarily. But all of knowledge. And how all of knowledge, the acquisition of it, without divine intervention, without some external help, the impossibility of that notion, the fact of that knowledge, the fact of revelation, or the fact of the kitab, the qaratis, the words on those pages of the book, those are facts, right? Explain them. Explain what is the best explanation. Fine, you want to keep God out of the equation and offer a reasonable explanation without God? Go ahead. Take your chances. What do you come up with? What do you come up with that makes any more sense than what an Abrahamic understanding gives you? How far have you succeeded in doing that? Have you not made the discussions more convoluted? Have you not made the explanations more and more ridiculous, internally inconsistent? You want to go with the hypotheses that these did not arise from God? By all means, go ahead and do that. Are your explanations any more reasonable, any more internally consistent? Are they? Do they, the contradictions that they are so rife with, don't you see them? The dogma that you hold on to, that this is not from God, what evidence do you have for that? If that's what all your explanations are proceeding from, then why? Why this belligerent rejection? Why this dogmatism? Why do you become so rigid in these rejections when you know that you've created more problems than you've solved? And then you go on to muddy the water to make it seem deep. Jargon, terminologies, these ineffable conceptions, vague language, circular discussions, books upon books upon books upon books. So just looking at the magnitude of the literature, any naive but sincere individual is intimidated. Like, oh my God, there's so many books. There has to be something in there. Love? Really? Is that what you want to do? You were taught what you and even your forefathers never knew. That's the beauty of how knowledge has progressed, how intimately Allah has always been involved in human progression, in the form of scriptural revelation, but then in the form of other forms of knowledge as well. قُلْ لِلَّهِ, tell them, Ya Rasulullah, it was Allah, that this is sourced in Allah. ثُمَّ ذَرْهُمْ فِي خَوْضِهِمْ يَلْعَبُونَ, then leave them to play in their useless arguments. One thing that emanates from all your useless arguments, the khawd, impracticality, or no social good. One common theme. After all those convoluted discussions, contradictory discussions, intellectual gymnastics, what comes forth from there? What social good? How is humanity a better place? How are human beings better off? How? So let them play around. These discussions are like games which are ends in themselves. And they want you to get lost in them so that nothing comes out of them, so that nothing is demanded of them, so that nothing changes. Status quo maintained. Exploitation continues. Injustices prevail. Tawheed is a theoretical reality. And practical social truth that it has to be made through free choices, free individuals making the right choices, that's lost. It's lost. Whether those discussions are philosophical or theological or a mix of the two or whatever, whether they're taking place in the university or the madrasa or wherever, or your coffee table is just the same. They're khawd. You're playing around with ideas of such incredible import, such sanctity and sacredness, and you turn them into a joke. وَهَذَا كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مُبَارَكٌ, and this is a blessed book we have revealed, مُصَدِّقُ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ, confirming what has preceded it. وَلِتُنذِرَ أُمَّ الْقُرَى وَمَنْ حَوْلَهَا, so that you, Ya Rasulullah, may warn the al-Qura, that Mecca is the mother city, the main city, and its surroundings. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ, those who believe in the hereafter, those who take the consequences of their actions seriously, and every consequence of your action is a sign of akhirah. And the further ahead you recognize the impact of your actions, the furthest ahead would be Yawmul Qiyamah itself, the day of judgment, heaven and hell. وَهُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ, and they guard their prayers. They're very vigilant, recognizing the importance of this spiritual connection, of keeping the flame of Tawheed alive in their hearts so that they can keep it alive in their lives, in their societies, with their interactions. They're going to take it seriously. For them, these ideas are not mere theory. For them, they have a practical import. وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Who can be more unjust than the one who fabricates a lie against Allah? أو قال, or he claims أوحي إلي ولم يوحى إليه شيء. See, I have received revelation when he has not received anything. وَمَنْ قال, or the one who says سَأُنزِلُ مِثْلَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ. Again, one of two possibilities. Either Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the one what the Quraysh are accusing him of. Allah saying, if that is true, that is a big deal. That's horrible. That's atrocious. But then he is telling the truth, and then there's others coming along. I can do what he's doing. سَأُنزِلُ مِثْلَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ. I shall reveal what Allah has revealed. وَلَوْ تَرَى إِذِ الظَّالِمُونَ فِي غَمَرَاتِ الْمَوْتِ. If you could just see when these unjust people are in the agonies of death, وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ بَاسِطُوا أَيْدِيهِمْ, and the angels will be extending their hands towards them. أَخْرِجُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Hand over yourselves. Hand yourselves over. You're under arrest. Death is holding you under arrest. الْيَوْمَ تُجْزَوْنَ عَذَابَ الْهُونِ. Today you will be given a humiliating punishment. Why humiliating? Because you were arrogating yourself before that. It was your arrogance more than anything else. And your great intellectual capacities were in the service of this arrogance. بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ. You used to say about Allah what you had no right to say. وَكُنْتُمْ عَنْ آيَاتِهِ تَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. And you used to be arrogant towards His ayat. وَلَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا فُرَادًا. So now you have come to us alone. كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. As we created you the first time. وَتَرَكْتُمْ مَا خَوَّلْنَاكُمْ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِكُمْ. And you have left behind whatever we gave you. وَمَا نَرَى مَعَكُمْ. And we don't see with you شُفَعَاءَكُمُ الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ أَنَّهُمْ فِيكُمْ شُرَكَاء. Your intercessors. All that you thought would get you through. All that you thought was enough for you. All that you thought was more important than Allah. More important against Allah. Important enough to hold you up against Allah. Where are they? The associates. لَقَدْ تَقَطَّعَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Your relationships seem to have broken between all of you. وَضَلَّ عَنْكُمْ مَا كُنْتُمْ تَزْعُمُونَ. And those that you used to claim that will help you, they've forsaken you. It seems that those bonds were very weak. Those relationships were very fragile. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله فالق الحب والنوى. Most definitely it is Allah who is the cleaver of the grain and the date seed. The potential that the date seed has, the potential that the grain has. It's an entire tree within itself. And that potential is dormant. Again, their demand for ayat, according to their dictation, bring us a book from the heavens, the river that should just, burst through the mountain, or whatever it is that they were asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for. And Allah's insistence, no, look at the date seed. Look at the grain. How the natural processes, not supernatural, natural. The miracles in the mundane, in the routine, in the patterns that you see around you in the world. Look at those. يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ. He extracts the living from the dead. The growth of a plant from a seed being evidence of how something dead can have the potential of life inside it, and you see it burst forth. Allah is the Faliq, the one who brings it out. وَمُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتِ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. And He is the extractor of the dead from the living. From that same tree, You will get fruits, and within those fruits, you will have those seeds. Again, those dead um, material things from which, again, He is capable of bringing out another tree. ذَلِكُمُ That's Allah. فَأَنَّا تُؤْفَكُونَ. So how are you being misled? He is that intimately involved with every little thing that's going on in this earth. Where are you going? Who are you following? Which God are you looking for? خالق الإصباح. He is the one who breaks, cleaves the daybreak. So the Faliq al-Habbi wal-Nawa, he's the God of biology, the cleaver of the daybreak, the one who makes the day burst forth from the darkness, the the God of the material universe. We just saw the God of the biological universe, same Allah. And now again, the one who brings the daybreak. وَجَعَلَ اللَّيْلَ سَكَنًا. And He made the night to rest. وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ حُسْبَانًا. And the sun and the moon, حُسْبَانًا, according to a calculation and for a calculation. That because their patterns are fixed as to how they orbit, and therefore they are reliable for you to develop calendars out of. That's how calendars do come about. They're possible because of the patterns, the habits that you observe in nature. ذلك التقدير العزيز العليم. And whose habits are these? Who has put these patterns in place? Allah, Al-Aziz Al-Alim. These are reflective of His might, of His knowledge. وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ النُّجُومَ لِتَهْتَدُوا بِهَا. He is the one who made for you the stars so that you may be guided by them. فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. In the dark of land and sea. That the reliability of the position of the stars, because it is fixed, because those are regular patterns, they guide you. You know where to go in the darkness of land and sea. قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمِ يَعْلَمُونَ. So He is explaining, this is we, قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا, we have explained our signs for the people of knowledge. If you look at these, you enhance your ilm in, that, in all of this phenomena. These are ayat of Allah. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. And He is the one who raised you from one individual. فَمُسْتَقَرٌّ وَمُسْتَوْدَعٌ. And for everyone there is a place to live and a place to rest. So we saw the world of biological life, concluding with that how that is ayat of Allah, and He is the same God. The one revealing the Quran is the one who is intimately involved in the processes of life, in a seed and a grain and plants and everything, life and death. Day and night, the one who is the God of the Quran, the one revealing these ayat, is the same one who's organized and intimately involved in the cycle of day and night in the material universe. And then the human community, the human society, all what you see, your culture, your politics, your society, your psychologies, your sociologies, your anthropologies, your political sciences, your economics. Allah is the one who brought you forth from one human being, from one individual. فَمُسْتَقَرٌّ وَمُسْتَوْدَعٌ. And so for everyone there is a place to live and a repository. Now this has been seen to represent more than one thing. The dunya can be the mustaqar, and if that's the mustaqar, then the womb, where the place of remaining for a temporary period of time before coming into the dunya. That's the womb. That's the mustawda. And if akhirah is the mustaqar, then the grave is the womb of the earth, the mustawda. And if the akhirah is the mustaqar, then this world, this dunya, this life is the mustawda. And how the mustaqar and mustawda, their their relationship, understanding both of them in connection, in how they make each other meaningful, and how this pairing is important. قد فصلنا الآيات لقوم يفقهون, and we have explained these signs for the people who understand, or for the people who are looking to understand, seeking understanding. وهو الذي ينزل من السماء ماء. He is the one who sends down water from the sky. فأخرجنا به نبات كل شيء, and we produce with it growth of all things. فأخرجنا منه خضرا نخرج منه حبا متراكبا, and then we bring out from it green blades from which we produce clustered grains. So now you see all these worlds coming together. There was that the seed and the grain, life and death, biological world, and then the daybreak, day and night, and how now they interact, and the interaction is meaningful. That from that cycle of day and night, how your the food that is produced, the seasons, and how they are intimately tied with what is grown and when it is grown, and how those changes, the weather, the rain, how those facts of material world make life in the biological world possible. This interaction, this relationship, sign of the continuity, or this experience of continuity, sign of the unity that Allah is, and the meaningfulness of where all this is headed. وَمِنَ النَّخْلِ, and from the palm trees, مِنْ طَلْعِهَا قِنْوَانٌ دَانِيَةٌ, of its emerging fruit are clusters hanging low. وَجَنَّاتٍ مِّنْ أَعْنَابٍ, and gardens of grapevines. وَالزَّيْتُونَ وَالرُّمَّانَ مُشْتَبِهًا وَغَيْرَ مُتَشَابِهٍ, and olives and pomegranates, similar yet varied. From the same class of foods or fruits, yet you see a diversity within each class. You see a diversity of classes than within the classes, within the categories. انظروا إلى ثمره إذا أثمر وينعه. So look at its fruit when it appears and when it is ripening. إن في ذلكم لآيات لقوم يؤمنون. So in all of those are signs for the people looking to believe, for the people looking for iman, for the people having that attitude of iman, for the people wanting to be, to look for the evidence, for the truth, so they can believe in it. If you have that attitude, then the resources are out there. وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ شُرَكَاءَ الْجِنِّ, yet they ascribe jinn to Allah as his associates. وَخَلَقَهُمْ, he created them. وَخَرَقُوا لَهُ بَنِينَ وَبَنَاتٍ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ, and they have fabricated for him sons and daughters without any knowledge. Subhanahu wa ta'ala amma yasifun, exalted is he, and he is high above what they ascribe. See, their exaltation of Allah was such that they did not want or could not comprehend that from that exalted pedestal that they have placed him on, he could reveal, he could communicate, he could be asked of anything. They've transcended him, but then there's spiritual needs that human beings have. We do need some connection with the divine. Our very essence as psychological beings, we're spiritual beings. What do you do about that? That's when all of these fabrications come in. Oh, there's jinnat. Those are the intermediaries between us and God. Oh, God has daughters. How can God have? He just has daughters. We can ask them, we can go through them. They are access to the divine. What? First, you throw him out of the universe, make him completely irrelevant, incommunicable, inaccessible, and then you fabricate and come up with all of these other deities. What's going on there? Where's all of this coming from? What's the source? Where's the ilm? Where's the knowledge? Where are the ayats? Nothing. How does that make sense? Allah is exalted in that He doesn't have these daughters. He doesn't have these jinnat who are His associates. No. Allah is exalted in that He communicates. Allah is exalted in that He responds to du'as. Allah is exalted in that He is intimately concerned with every little thing, from the tiny date seed to the great things of orbiting of the stars and galaxies. He's great in that. He's exalted in bringing all of that together. Badi'u samawati wal ard. He is the originator of the heavens and the earth. Anna yakunu lahu walad. How can he have a son? Walam takun lahu sahiba. He doesn't have a wife. وَخَلَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. And He created everything. وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And He is knowledgeable of everything. You're ascribing the sorts of attributes to Him that you have no sanction for. ذَلِكُمْ, again, because He is so transcendent, He doesn't care for, can't know is projected or is put forward in the form of doesn't care. It doesn't matter to Him. It's too insignificant for Him. He's too high and mighty for it. And therefore the jinnat and the sons and daughters become necessary. Allah says, no, I know. Thank you very much. I don't need them to tell me. I already know. ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ. That is Allah, your Rabb. La ilaha illahu. There is no ilah except Him. خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. He's the creator of everything. فَاعْبُدُوهُ. So to Him, enter into the ibadah of. Enter in His ibadah. Start this relationship with Him. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَكِيلٌ. And He is the disposer, the caretaker of all things, the one to be relied upon. لَا تُدْرِكُهُ الْأَبْصَارِ. Vision cannot perceive Him. The very limitations of your senses, that you want to have an absolute image of Him, or you want to encompass Him in your vision, you can't encompass His creation in your vision. وَهُوَ يُدْرِكُ الْأَبْصَارِ. And He perceives all vision. You want to see God, but then your capacity of seeing, it's whatever it encompasses is not Him. He is so much greater than all of that. وَهُوَ يُدْرِكُ الْأَبْصَارِ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. And He is subtle. He is subtle. Allah's presence in the imperceptible presence of Allah in all that is perceptible. Whatever your absar can have idrak of, can embrace or encompass His subtle presence in them, in that His involvement in taking care of the things, His knowledge as it reflects through them, His power as it reflects to them, His mercy as it reflects through them. That's where you're supposed to pick Him up or get an understanding of Him from. Al-Khabir, He is the aware. قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ بَصَائِرُ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ. There has reached you eye-opening proofs from your Rabb. You work your way through the basair. from what you have been able to see to the rububiyyah of humanity. Allah's rububiyyah as it relates to humanity. Rabbukum, all of you. He is all of your Rabb. قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ بَصَائِرُ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ. So these are the basair that you're looking for. They've already reached you. They're in your access. Um, this is what your human faculties are capable of. فَمَنْ أَبْصَرَ فَلِنَفْسِهِ. So whoever sees them, he does so to his own benefit. وَمَنْ عَمِيَ فَعَلَيْهَا. And whoever is blind to them, you're not going to pick up on the knowledge that you've been given for whatever it is that you can see. You think you're going to be able to understand or pick up or comprehend or encompass Allah if you see Him? وَمَا أَنَا عَلَيْكُمْ بِحَفِيظٍ. Then tell them, Ya Rasulullah, that I am not a guardian over you. It is not my job to force you to believe. If you don't believe, that's not on me. وَكَذَلِكَ نُصَرِّفُ الْآيَاتِ. And that is how we explain our ayat in different ways. وَلِيَقُولُوا دَرَسْتَ. So that they may say that you have studied somewhere. You got this from somewhere. How do you know all of this stuff? وَلِنُبَيِّنَهُ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. And we may make it clear to the people who realize. He has learnt it from somewhere, from Allah, from Jibreel. اتَّبِعْ مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ. So follow whatever is revealed to you from your Rabb. La ilaha illa hu. There is no one worthy of worship other than Him, no ilaha other than Him. وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And stay away from the people of shirk. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا أَشْرَكُ. When had Allah wanted, they would not have committed shirk. He could have just forced their hand. وَمَا جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفِيظًا. We have not appointed you as a guardian over them. So if Allah does not take that right for Himself, if He has given them the freedom, you let them be as well. You give them the freedom as well. No human being has that right then to force anybody's hand towards Iman. وَمَا أَنْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِوَكِيلٍ. And you are not their manager. وَلَا تَسُبُّ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. So do not insult those whom they call on besides Allah. As much as the Quran engages with them to identify the fallacies of their belief, the shortcomings of their understanding, it does not get emotional about it or does not resort to a cursing of the gods. Because once you open that door, then you have to open that door to them as well. And Allah would not have that. So do not curse what they hold sacred, lest they start cursing what you hold sacred. The standards have to be the same. You open that door to yourselves, you're opening that door to them as well. And you don't want that. So don't do that. فَيَسُبُّ اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. So lest in retaliation, they insult Allah. They abuse Him out of ignorance. كَذَلِكَ زَيَّنَّا لِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ عَمَلَهُم. That is how we've made the practice of every community pleasing to them. They get a religious kick out of these battles, this mutual insult. They think they're doing their religiosity a favor. It's an act of good. They will see this practice of blasphemy as an act of righteousness. Their super egos are going to get a nice massage because that's what they grew up believing. And whatever you grow up believing, anything that challenges that belief, insulting it, abusing it, for the heck of it, that becomes an act of righteousness. ثُمَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ مَرْجِعُهُمْ. Then their ultimate return is to their Rabb. فَيُنَبِّئُهُم بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And He will inform them of what they had been doing. وَأَقْسَمُوا بِاللَّهِ جَهْدَ أَيْمَانِهِمْ. And they swear by Allah their strongest oaths. لَإِنْ جَاءَتْهُمْ آيَةٌ لَيُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهَا. That if that ayah, the ayah that they want, whatever that they're demanding, the miracle, the supernatural event, if it were to come to them, they would definitely believe in it. Well, إِنَّمَا الْآيَاتُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Tell them straight out, all ayats are with Allah. That's His prerogative. وَمَا يُشْعِرُكُمْ. And what will make you understand أَنَّهَا إِذَا جَاءَتْ. That if it does come to them, لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. They're not going to believe in it. They just don't have the attitude for it. if they have rejected ayat after ayat after ayat after ayat after ayat in the natural world, within themselves, from the Quran, you think they will accept it when it's produced on demand? Their habit has become one of kibr, one of kufr. You show them whatever ayat, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. وَتُقَلِّبُ أَفْئِدَتَهُمْ وَأَبْصَارَهُم. We will turn away their hearts and eyes. The very faculties that give you this, at the end of the day, even the greatest of ayat will require interpretation, will require inference, will require for you to say something intelligent about them. Belief is going to be called for. These same faculties are going to be engaged. You never use them right. You don't know how to use them right. Allah says, I will take them away. I will turn away their hearts and eyes. As they did not believe in it the first time. So what's the point now? And we leave them in their transgression, wandering blindly. Allah takes it very seriously that He has given these gifts, these faculties to the human being. And they're to be nurtured, their use is to be refined, is to be made more and more precise, is to be made such that the interpretation is as close to the truth as you can humanly get. You don't use it, it atrophies. There's no shukr involved. There's no appreciation of the gifts that Allah has given you. You denigrate those gifts, He takes them away. He turns them around. They're twisted. What they show you is an inverted picture of reality altogether. وَلَوْ أَنَّنَا نَزَّلْنَا إِلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةَ. Even if we send down the angels to them, وَكَلَّمَهُمُ الْمَوْتَى. And the dead spoke to them, وَحَشَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ قُبُلًا. And we produce everything before them. مَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا. They will never believe, إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ, except if Allah wills. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ يَجْهَلُونَ. But most of them are ignorant. They're overwhelmed. They're stimulus response creatures. They're functioning at that level. There is no, whatever higher faculties, they resigned those a long time back. Those faculties are subject now in the service of their jahala, their resentment that they hold against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the kibr that they hold for themselves. Those are the determining factors of their choices and their responses. Not ayat of Allah, not truth. So whatever they see, not going to work. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا. And that's how we made enemies for each prophet. شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ. These evil people, these evil human beings, and jinnats, evil jinnats, seen and unseen forces. Interestingly, as soon as their jahala is put out, is mentioned, jahil being, again, ignorant of ayat, of knowledge outside, and overwhelmed by emotions, right? A person who is overwhelmed works at limbic system level, works at a subhuman level, stimulus response, as we said. That's who they are. That's the sitting duck for demonic forces, for demonic personified demons. Forget demonic, demons. Shayateen al-insi wal-jinn. And so that's who they are. And that's what they're wreaking in society. Because believe it or not, even in their evil, there is a manifestation of a unity of purpose, which is against the divine purpose. And so the demonic in them, how it is representative of demons, of how it is representative of shaitan, ash-shaitan, that we have Allah and we have an understanding of Allah, and there are ayats that point towards His involvement in the world and the world process and the society in its direction. We have signs to the contrary as well, that there is that which is indicative of the evil presence or the presence of evil, a conscious personified presence of evil. We can't see it, but its effects are across the board. It's plain for anyone to see how very disparate events, they boil down to, they culminate in those practices of injustice, those practices of evil, all of what is categorized as evil, and how it is so systematic. Systematic in bringing about chaos. How incredible is that? يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ. They inspire one another. They're sending out this communication is taking place between them. زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا. This communication, what is it doing? This glittering speech, this glorious speech meant for delusion, these splendid vices. They're in their heads engaged in such good, such pursuit of truth, such moral uprightness. But what is it bringing about in the world? Is it making it a better place in any way? And they're deceiving themselves into actually thinking they're onto something. زخرف القول غرورا. Glittering speech, very alluring, very attractive, looking very good, looking very righteous, but غرورا, deception. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوهُ. If Allah wanted, they would not have done it. It has become, this practice is something reflexive, فَعَلُوهُ. It is just habitual, how they're engaged in these practices, and they think that it's so good. فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. So let them be, whatever they've fabricated and concocted. وَلِتَصْغَى إِلَيْهِ أَفْئِدَةُ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ. And they do all of what they're doing, so that the hearts of those who do not believe in the hereafter may be inclined to their, whatever it is, their deceptive speech, their glorious speech. وَلِيَرْضَوْا. And they may be satisfied with it. They need a satisfaction as well. There's an angst inside them. There's guilt inside them. This glittering speech, this glorious speech, these mechanisms of self-deception, of group deception, this how within that group and between those groups they reaffirm and reassure each other of how they're doing something great for humanity, how their own intellectual faculties are suppressed for the good that they have apparently committed themselves to. And they are willing to go to the nth limit for it. They're willing to die for it. And they have this inner satisfaction, وَلِيَرْضَوْا, so that they're satisfied with it. وَلِيَقْتَرِفُوا مَا هُمْ مُقْتَرِفُونَ. And they continue to commit whatever it is that they're committing. It is incredible. Where is this motivation from? Where is this perseverance coming from in this direction of evil? أَفَغَيْرَ اللَّهِ أَبْتَغِي حَكَمًا. So should I look for a judge other than Allah? وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكِتَابَ مُفَصَّلًا. And He is the one who sent down to you the book explained in detail. وَالَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. And those whom we have given the book. يَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ مُنَزَّلٌ مِّن رَبِّكَ بِالْحَقِّ. They know that it is revealed from your Rabb with truth. They know that Al-Haq as represented in the Bible and Al-Haq as represented in the Quran, there is a continuity. There is the same Al-Haq. فَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُمْتَرِينَ. So never ever be of those who doubt. وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. The word of your Rabb has been perfected in truth and in justice. لَا مُبَدِّلَ لِكَلِمَاتِهِ. No one can alter His words. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And He is all hearing, all knowing. وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And if you obey the majority of those on earth, يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. They will divert you from the path of Allah. As far as most people are concerned, they're living at subhuman level. As far as most people are concerned, the default is to be reactionary creatures, stimulus response creatures, monkey see, monkey do level of operation. That's what the default becomes. We are a crowd until we consciously identify, choose to not be part of the crowd. These instincts are very powerful. The default way of surviving in the world is very overbearing. The default ways of religiosity, it's incredibly irresistible. Until and unless you consciously choose to pick yourselves up, start seeing, start hearing, start reasoning, and ready to break yourselves off and tear yourselves off from the mainstreams, because it's a stream and it's powerful. And unless you know which direction you're swimming, and usually that's against the stream, and unless you know you've refined your ability to swim against the stream, you're going to be swept away. You're going to be swept away. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being warned that if you, and who is better than him, if you start listening to them, if you start falling for all of that, you will be swept away. Off the sirat. Where are you being swept away from? Off the sirat al-mustaqim. Off the sirat al-mustaqim. You want to remain in your comfort zone? You don't want to take up any struggles. You think you're already guided. You think there's no more effort that needs to be made. You want to lay your intellectual processes to rest. You have reached your destination. Fair enough if that works for you. If you're okay with that, by all means, stay with it, stay strong. Hold on to it with both hands and see what that makes of you. They follow nothing but assumptions. This commitment to truth. Human beings are naturally predisposed as children. As children, it is convenient. It is intellectually economical to stereotype, to resort to assumptions, to trust assumptions. And that's fine as children. We cannot know everything. We have to trust. We have to draw conclusions based on incomplete information. And that's fine for a child, that's fine for a teenager, that's even fine for an adult, as long as the incompleteness of that knowledge is understood for what it is and you're looking to increase it as you're moving forward, especially when the results that you're experiencing are contrary to what your assumptions were before. But if the assumptions, if you've settled on them, if you're satisfied with very fixed beliefs based mostly on assumptions, it's a very dangerous place to be in. إِن يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ. They follow nothing but assumptions. وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَخْرُصُونَ. And they're doing nothing but guessing. That's become the default mode. Why is that the case? I think that's the case. Oh, you think. Why do you think that's? I feel it. Oh, you feel it. Okay. I think I feel is the entirety of your epistemology, of your understanding of what knowledge and what truth is. The sole criteria. Understandably, I think I feel is a necessary criteria for knowledge. One of many others. How I think and I feel is refined, is made better, is improved with time. That requires the attitude of Iman. That's commitment to the truth, the al-haq. That is opening yourself up to the fallibility of not just your own individual person, but the fallibility of others, your elders. That they gave us greatness, they gave us wisdom, but it wasn't the final word. To build on it, to understand it, to stay rooted in it, but not stuck in it. Our tradition can be the roots of our tree that grows and has branches and fruits, or it can be the swamp that we're drowning in. What do you want for it to be? إن ربك هو أعلم من يضل عن سبيله. Most definitely your Rabb knows who strays from his way. These definitive categorical declarations of this is the guidance that which I am upon. That's a divine claim. Allah makes those pronouncements. He makes that judgment. How dare anybody else? You're not a prophet. You're not getting direct revelation with no demonic interpolation. You don't have that. Where is this belligerent certainty coming from? Why such godlike claims? وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. He is the one who knows best who the rightly guided are. فَكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. So eat upon which Allah's name has been mentioned. إِن كُنْتُمْ بِآيَاتِهِ مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you really are believers in His signs, in His ayat. وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. And why would you not eat of what Allah's name has been called upon? وَقَدْ فَصَّلَ لَكُمْ مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ. And He has already explained to you what He has made forbidden upon you. إِلَّا مَا اضْطُرِرْتُمْ إِلَيْهِ. Except what you are forced. You don't have a choice. You have to eat. Fine. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا لَيُضِلُّونَ بِأَهْوَائِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. But for sure, many people look to mislead others through their own desires without knowledge. Not having a standard of truth, and therefore being vulnerable to very dangerous personal desires that goes hand in hand. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُعْتَدِينَ. For sure, your Rabb knows best about the transgressors. وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ. And leave all sins, whether open or secret. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْسِبُونَ الْإِثْمِ. For sure, those who earn sin, سَيُجْزَوْنَ بِمَا كَانُوا يَقْتَرِفُونَ. They will soon be rewarded of what they used to commit. So there's two ways of the zahir ithm and the batin ithm. One is obvious, that you're sinning openly, everyone can see the sin, the flagrant sinning going on, fair enough. And then there is sinning when nobody is watching, fair enough. But then there is that which is a righteous deed, a good deed, a wonderful act, an act of piety on the outside, but it is sinful inside. The sinfulness of it is unconscious. From the outward appearance, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is leading the Sahaba in Masjid al-Nabawi, in Salatul Fajr, Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Abdullah bin Ubay is part of that congregation. From outward appearance, he's part of the Sahaba. He's following Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Does that look to be in ithm in any way? It looks like a wonderful deed to be. You're praying in Masjid al-Nabawi behind Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the front row. But how that activity in itself the most righteous, from where it is finding its motivation inside, the ahwa, that it's satisfying. And that being the dominant, overwhelmingly dominant motivation, drive for that apparently religious activity, makes that very religious activity very sinful, very, very sinful. What emanates of our fasting, our charity, our prayers, in terms of the personality that we develop, is it better or is it worse? Is it more or less arrogant? Is it more or less open to truth? Is it more or less socially beneficial? So leave ظاهر الإثم وباطن. It's a very, very difficult struggle. It requires a conscious engagement. إن الذين يكسبون الإثم سيجزون بما كانوا يقترفون. Those who earn sin, they would be rewarded for what they used to commit. They will be paid for what they used to commit. Again, with this recognition, it makes sense why you have to be so vigilant in 5 daily prayers. Why do you have to say the same words again and again and again and again and again and again? You have to go back, the same motions, the same rituals, again and again. Because it has to be associated with this degree of suspicion. Am I really a believer? And quite honestly, you can't have the answer to that question. You shouldn't have an answer to that question. Am I a hypocrite or am I a believer? Because if you could have, if you should have, then Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu should have known. Do I understand Quran better than him? Do I have a better understanding of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing than him? So if after all of that, his conclusion is that attitude of suspicion before himself, and he is literally begging Huzaifa, please tell me, is my name on that list? If that's the degree of his suspicion about himself, about his own faith, then to not have that belligerent certainty about your faith is that humility is the way to go, is the way to approach. It's balanced by a hope. But again, hope, not certainty. سيجزون ما بما كانوا يقترفون ولا تأكلوا بما لم يذكر اسم الله عليه. And do not eat of on which Allah's name has not been mentioned. وَإِنَّهُ لَفِسْقٌ, and it is for sure an act of disobedience. وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَى أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ, and the shayateen inspire their allies that they should argue with you. وَإِنْ أَطَعْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ لَمُشْرِكُونَ, and if you obey them, you will definitely be of the mushrikeen. How so much of their eating practices, their sacrificing practices, and the lack of commitment or the absence of the commitment to Tawheed has a bearing on the society itself. Because it's a very routine act. It's a very mundane act, sacrificing an animal and saying Allah's name on it. But the impact that it has, the bearing that it has, what it says, what it reflects of a culture, and the impact that that culture can have on you if you're not careful. أَوَمَنْ كَانَ مَيْتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ, can a person who was dead and we brought him to life, وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ, and we gave him light to walk with among the people. كَمَا مَثَلُهُ فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ, can he be like the one who is in the depths of darkness? لَيْسَ بِخَارِجٍ مِنْهَا, from which he is never going to come out. كَذَلِكَ زُيِّنَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. That's how the practice of disbelievers was decorated for them. The one who has a light. It's so beautiful that this parable of light with Iman, what does a light give you? That on your journey, your light lets you see the path. On your journey, your light lets you see where the path is turning, where the path is changing. Your light lets you see new things on the path. Pretty much any exploration that you do, any knowledge that you're looking to discover, you have to bring it to light. There's one form or the other of a light source that you need to be able to see it, to be able to make sense of it. So having Iman, and the reason why we keep referring to it as an attitude, it is like having that light. Not having the tree of knowledge, but having the light with which to see ever increasing knowledge. And then there's that person who is fixated in his dhulumat, just sitting there. The one with light is walking, the one in dhulumat is fixated. He's already attained his perfection. And the veils of darkness surrounding him, they don't bother him. They are the strength of his Iman. Alas, are these two people the same? One sitting in darkness, the other walking with light. The walking and the sitting, the process versus apparently having attained perfection. This is how for the kafirin, their amal is made beautiful. They're sitting in their darknesses, not moving, not growing, not evolving, nothing's taking place, and they think that's awesome. And they look at this flux, this movement. Your qibla was somewhere else till yesterday, it's somewhere else today. What's going on with you people? Your commandments, what's going on with you people? First there was this revelation, now there's this other. What's going on with you? They can't see that. And they are so proud of how they don't have this flux, how they don't have this movement. They look at this movement as a sign of imperfection. They look at their own fixity as a sign of perfection, having attained it. Allah looks at this movement as growth. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا فِي كُلِّ قَرْيَةٍ أَكَابِرَ مُجْرِمِيهَا. And this is how we placed in every town the ringleaders of its criminals, لِيَمْكُرُوا فِيهَا, to plot therein. وَمَا يَمْكُرُونَ إِلَّا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. But they do not plot except against themselves. So they're so proud, rigidly rooted in what they understand to be their traditions. And they see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a rebel moving away from their traditions. And they're like, we have to stop him. We have to stop this growth. وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. But they're not aware. They have deceived themselves so well that they think they're on the side of good and this is evil that they're fighting. وَإِذَا جَاءَتْهُمْ آيَةٌ. Whenever they receive an ayah, what is the essence of the person who is rooted, fixated in his layers of dhulumat? Yeah, this temple, this shrine, they're like sitting, meditating, and surrounded in darknesses, eyes closed. Whenever a sign comes to them, قالوا لن نؤمن حتى نؤتي مثل ما أوتي رسل الله. They say, we will never believe until we are also given what the messengers were given. Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalata. Allah knows better where to place his message. Don't dictate to him. Don't try to, thank you very much for your advice. You don't need it. Allah knows who deserves it and who doesn't. لَيُصِيبُ الَّذِينَ أَجْرَمُوا. So soon these criminals will be afflicted. صَغَارٌ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَعَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ. With a humiliation. The saghar, which is a befitting punishment for their kibr. a humiliation from Allah, وَعَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ, and a severe punishment, بِمَا كَانُوا يَمْكُرُونَ, because they used to plot all these plans. فَمَنْ يُرِدُ اللَّهُ أَيْنِ, these plans to bring down Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, these plans to stymie his growth and that of the community of believers responding to him. فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ, and so whoever Allah wants to guide, يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ, he opens his heart for Islam. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ أَنْ يُضِلَّهُ, and whoever Allah decides to mislead, يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا, he makes his chest constricted and tight. كَأَنَّمَا يَسَّعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ, as if he is ascending the sky. As you're ascending the sky, it becomes more and more difficult. So for an Arab, ascending the sky would be climbing a mountain or something to that effect. Not flying on a plane in any way, but necessarily the more you're climbing, the more you're losing your breath, the more difficult it's getting, the more you don't want to go on. It's not acceptable. كَذَلِكَ يَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, that is how Allah places defilement, rijs, upon those who do not believe. وَهَذَا صِرَاطُ رَبِّكَ مُسْتَقِيمًا, and this is the path of your Rabb, straight. قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَذَّكَّرُونَ, and we have clearly spelled out ayat for a people looking to remember, for a people looking to understand. لَهُمْ دَارُ السَّلَامِ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ, for these people is an abode of peace with their Rabb. وَهُوَ وَلِيُّهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, and he is their protector because of what they used to do. They're people of action. They're people involved in activity, in doing. And they would find Allah to be their friend. وَيَوْمَ يَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا, and the day He will gather them all, يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ, Allah will say, assembly of jinn, قَدْ اسْتَكْثَرْتُمْ مِنَ الْإِنسِ, you have misled a good number of human beings. وَقَالَ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمْ مِنَ الْإِنسِ, and their friends from humanity will say, رَبَّنَا اسْتَمْتَعْ بَعْضُنَا بِبَعْضٍ, our Rabb, we used each other. It's not just them. We were pretty demonic ourselves. وَبَلَغْنَا أَجَلَنَا الَّذِي أَجَلْتَ لَنَا, and now we have reached the end of our term that you appointed for us. قَالَ النَّارُ مَثْوَاكُمْ, Allah will say, hellfire is your home. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, you live therein forever. إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ, except what Allah wills. If hellfire is purgatory for someone, then that's Allah's will. If He deems that the punishment is enough, sufficient, now though that kibr has melted away and that predilection for iman has been revived, so be it. He will bring that person out. Inna rabbaka hakimun alim, for sure your Rabb is wise and knowing. وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ, and so this is how we will bring those who are unjust as allies to one another because of what they used to earn. Birds of a feather flock together. Eventually they find each other. Ya ma'shar al-jinni wal-ins. Again, the day of judgment, the inquiry, the interrogation rather, the accountability is carrying on. Allah is going to ask the jinn and the human beings. Ya ma'shar al-jinn wal-ins. Alam ya'tikum rusulun minkum. Did messengers not come to you from among you? يَقُصُّونَ عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِ, relating to you our ayat. وَيُنذِرُونَكُمْ لِقَاءَ يَوْمِكُمْ هَذَا, and warning you about the meeting of this very day of yours. قَالُوا شَهِدْنَا عَلَى أَنفُسِنَا, they will say, we bear witness against ourselves. وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا, the life of the world deceived them. It was so alluring, it was so overwhelming that akhirah was out of the picture altogether. وَشَهِدُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ, so they will testify against themselves أَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا كَافِرِينَ, that they used to deny the truth. So the ones being addressed, the ones that are testifying that yes, messengers came, ayat came, yet our addiction to whatever we had immediately in front of us was so strong, so overwhelming, we paid no attention, neither to the messengers nor to the ayat. And akhirah was forgotten as a consequence. ذلك أَلَّمْ يَكُنْ رَبُّكَ مُهْلِكَ الْقُرَى بِظُلْمٍ. And so that is why your Rabb was never to destroy a town out of injustice. وَأَهْلُهَا غَافِلُونَ, while its residents were ignorant. Allah takes it very personally that His justice is in any way doubted. And so on the day of judgment, the explicit message being related by the messengers and the ayat having come in front of the people is going to be a criteria, and the people will bear witness themselves that yes, it did happen. It came. And so this principle is operative in this world as well. Only the adhab of Allah that used to come in this world was in response or in rejection to a prophet who had done his job right. ذلك ألم يكن ربك مهلك القرى بظلم وأهلها غافلون. So never, ignorant people were not destroyed, were not punished. وَلِكُلٍّ دَرَجَاتٌ مِّمَّا عَمِلُوا. Everyone will be awarded according to their actions. They will have ranks that they will be given, granted, according to the action that they've done. وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا يَعْمَلُونَ. And your Rabb is not unaware of what they acted. He is aware of actions in all of its dimensions, in its external, internal. What did they know? How much did they know? How much could they have done? How much did they do? Where was this, the motivation for what they're doing coming from? All of it is in front of Allah. We don't have to bother with giving categorical judgments as to the fate of people in the hereafter, or where they stand in terms of guidance with Allah. That's His job. That's something only He can do. وَرَبُّكَ الْغَنِيُّ ذُو الرَّحْمَةِ. Your Rabb is ghani. Your Rabb is independent, the possessor of mercy. إِن يَشَأْ يُذْهِبْكُمْ. If He will, He can do away with you. If He wants, you'd be gone. وَيَسْتَخْلِفْ مِنْ بَعْدِكُمْ مَا يَشَاءُ. And replace you with others of His choice. Whatever it is that He has created this world for, you don't live up to that, replaced. إِمَّا تُوعَدُونَ لَآتٍ كَمَا أَنْشَأَكُم مِّن ذُرِّيَّةٍ قَوْمٍ آخَرِينَ. Just the way He raised you as a progeny from some other people. It's the cycle of life, the progression of life rather. It's not cyclical, it's progressive. إِمَّا تُوعَدُونَ لَآتٍ. Surely what you are being promised is going to come. وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُعْجِزِينَ. And you're not going to be able to defeat Allah. قُلْ يَا قَوْمِ اعْمَلُوا عَلَى مَكَانِتِكُمْ. So you tell them, Ya Rasulullah, tell them, my people, do whatever you can. Whatever is in your power. إِنِّي أَعْمِلْ. And I'm going to do what I can. فَسَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ مَنْ تَكُونُ لَهُ عَاقِبَةُ الدَّارِ. And we will soon find out who is going to get the ultimate success of the hereafter. إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Without a doubt, the unjust people are not going to succeed. وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ مِمَّا ذَرَأَ مِنَ الْحَرْثِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ نَصِيبًا. And they assign Allah a share of the crop and cattle which He created. So He said, okay, this belongs to, they're like, this belongs to God. This belongs to Allah. فَقَالُوا هَذَا لِلَّهِ بِزَعْمِهِمْ. And they say, this is Allah. That was their claim. وَهَذَا لِشُرَكَائِنَا. And that is for our shuraka, that idol, that deity, that God, whatever. فَمَا كَانَ لِشُرَكَائِهِمْ فَلَا يَصِلُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. But the share assigned to the associates will not go to Allah. They're very rigid with respect to what their deities are going to be given. But as to whatever Allah was going to be given, وَمَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ فَهُوَ يَصِلُ إِلَى شُرَكَائِهِمْ. That would regularly go to the deities. سَاءَ مَا يَحْكُمُونَ. How evil is their judgment. By their own testimony, He is the greater God. He is Allah, and these are the daughters or whatever, the lesser gods. Yet this injustice as to how they would be with him versus how they would be with the gods of their own fabrication, the gods that they themselves have made, how their commitment to those gods is so much greater. Fair enough, if you're going to be polytheistic, if you're going to have gods with Allah, at least by your own declaration, he is greater, so your dedication and commitment to him should be greater. But here again, your injustice. وَكَذَلِكَ زَيَّنَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِّنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ قَتْلَ أَوْلَادِهِمْ شُرَكَاؤُهُمْ. And that is how the act of murdering, killing their own children was decorated, was disguised and made attractive for the people who do shirk. لِيُرْدُوهُمْ وَلِيَلْبِسُوا عَلَيْهِمْ دِينَهُمْ. In order to ruin themselves and make this deen obscure, more and more convoluted, confusing. What's going on? This killing of children in the name of deities other than God. How this polytheism sanctioned injustice for them. They cannot find any sanction for it with Allah. With whatever they believe of the greater God with a capital G, they cannot find any justification, any sanction whatsoever for this heinous crime. But with their deities, because the deities of their own fabrication have no basis in real knowledge, real truth, they can justify with them, using them, from them, anything they want to. No problem. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا فَعَلُوهُ. If Allah wanted, they wouldn't have done stuff like that. He wouldn't have allowed them. فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. So leave them and whatever they invent. They've given them themselves this license to invent whatever they want to. With this invention of gods, with these fabrications of gods, and that's dangerous. And they call it religion and they call it deen. And all of what's going on in the name of that religion, in the name of that deen, in the name of those deities, because they've given themselves such absolute licenses for which they don't have ilm. Ilm frightens them. They're insecure of knowledge because knowledge can call them out for the deceptions that they're guilty of, for the crimes that they're guilty of. Without knowledge, crimes are not even crimes. They're acts of worship. وَقَالُوا هَذِهِ أَنْعَامٌ وَحَرْثٌ حِجْرٌ. And they say that such and such cattle and crop are reserved. لَا يَطْعَمُهَا إِلَّا مَنْ نَشَاءُ بِزَعْمِهِمْ. No one will eat from them, except as whoever they want, on the basis of their assumptions. وَأَنْعَامٌ حُرِّمَتْ ظُهُورُهَا وَأَنْعَامٌ لَا يَذْكُرُونَ اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهَا إِفْتِرَاءً عَلَيْهِ. Similarly, they're inventing lies against Allah. They say, these are the cattle prohibited for riding, and these are the ones on whom it is forbidden to take Allah's name. سَيَجْزِيهِمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْتَرُونَ. Allah will repay them for their fabrications that they have been making. وَقَالُوا مَا فِي بُطُونِ هَذِهِ الْأَنْعَامِ خَالِصَةٌ لِذُكُورِنَا. And they would say whatever is in the bellies of that cattle is reserved for only our males. وَمُحَرَّمٌ عَلَى أَزْوَاجِنَا. And it is forbidden for our wives. وَإِن يَكُنْ مَيْتَةٌ فَهُمْ فِيهِ شُرَكَاء. But if it was dead, then they all eat from it. Then men, women all eat from it. So يَجْزِيهِمْ وَصْفَهُمْ. Allah will soon repay them for their descriptions that they're just coming up with. إِنَّهُ حَكِيمٌ عَلِيمٌ. He is wise and knowing. So on one end, they've killed their children. They've killed babies. And on the other end, they're so committed, so rigidly committed to these fabricated bid'ats, these rituals that they've invented. They're so unyielding. They're not going to move a jot or a tittle here and there from what they've made up by themselves. They follow it so religiously. Allah is not falling for it. Allah is not falling for acts that they think are good, and they seem to atone themselves, or they channel their guilt in these meaningless activities, these meaningless rituals, and they think that's punishment enough, or that's atonement enough. That's enough of a kafara for the crimes that they've committed. No, Allah will convict them of the crimes that they've committed, and no amount of meaningless rituals and no level of rigidity therein or religiosity therein is going to absolve them of that. Allah is wise and knowing. Don't try to fool him. You fooled yourselves very convincingly in thinking that that's all there is to religion. Fair enough. And those who kill their own children in foolishness, without any knowledge, have really suffered a huge loss. And by inventing against Allah wrongly, they deprive themselves of what Allah has provided them with. Go on, continue killing children, continue fabricating lies against Allah. Religiosity, as far as that goes, they're these complicated laws about which animal is halal and which animal is haram, and what kind of the son of which she camel is okay for which gender. They'll be very nitpicky about that. And on the other hand, their egregious crimes are ignored. And of course, it was very blatant with the Quraysh, with the people of Mecca. It was so easy to see and identify and point out. It's more subtle when we do it. It's far more subtle and therefore more insidious and more dangerous. There is no deities as such. Our rigidities, the meaninglessness of our rituals, very, very cleverly disguised. The way sons and daughters are killed in our society is not just burying them alive. That level of barbarianism is gone. But now we're still barbaric, only more subtle as to how we do it. But it's still there. It's still there. The crimes are there, the social injustice is there, and the rigid following of meaningless rituals is there. Meaningless innovations is there. Of these arbitrary prioritizations within religion, where each group has its own priorities, and they are rigidly dedicated to those and those priorities alone. The priorities of the others are relegated, ignored, underplayed, undermined, criticized, declared all kinds of labels. And there is this holier than thou attitude that each group cultivates for itself, but they have one thing in common: that regardless of the rigidity of their commitment to their brand of religiosity, they have no bearing, no impact on improving, eradicating in any way any form of social injustice. No bearing. And they are high off of their own supply, the supply being their particular religious commitments. And they come in all forms and shapes and sizes. And they have this satisfaction of being ultimately guided. Whereas what emanates from them socially, globally, as far as humanity is concerned, or as far as the ills of humanity are concerned. They have nothing intelligent to say. Forget do. Forget practically eradicating anything. Even to say, you find nothing. Prohibitions, the difficult lives that they're leading as ghuraba, strangers who are made fun of and mocked, and it's really difficult for them to get along because really their lives are that impractical. They're very proud of that. They're very proud of that. Okay. قَدْ ضَلُّوا. They really lost their way. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ, and they were not guided. Specifically speaking about the mushrikeen in Makkah, we cannot make such specific and categorical allegations on anyone in our society. That's Allah's job. We don't play God. But the patterns are there. Allah knows best. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَ جَنَّاتٍ مَعْرُوشَاتٍ وَغَيْرَ مَعْرُوشَاتٍ. Allah is the one who produced gardens, and they're like grapevines, the way they're all branched. And then there's those that they're not like, they don't have that grapevine sort of an appearance. وَالنَّخْلَ وَالزَّرْعَ مُخْتَلِفًا أُكُلُهُ. And he produces the date palm and crops with diverse tastes. وَالزَّيْتُونَ وَالرُّمَّانَ مُتَشَابِهًا وَغَيْرَ مُتَشَابِهٍ. And olives and pomegranates alike yet unlike. They look similar, but they taste so different. كُلُوا مِن ثَمَرِهِ إِذَا أَثْمَرَ. So eat of its fruit when it yields. وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. Do pay his due on the day of its harvest. Whatever very small percentage that Allah asks of you to share with others in charity and sadaqat and zakat, do that. The rest, don't get a religious high of prohibiting upon yourselves Allah's blessings. وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. Do not be excessive. Do not overstep your boundaries. When that overstepping of boundaries occurs in both directions, overstepping in self-indulgence, and just not caring at all. Everything is mine. Everyone can go to hell. That's one overindulgence. That's one extreme. The other extreme is giving everything away or prohibiting everything upon yourself. إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. Allah does not like the extremists. وَمِنَ الْأَنْعَامِ حَمُولَةً وَفَرْشًا. And out of cattle he created some for heavy transportation and others close to the ground in size. كُلُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ. So eat what Allah has provided you. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. He is an open enemy to you. ثمانية أزواج. 8 pairs. من الضأن اثنين ومن المعز اثنين. A pair of sheep and a pair of goat. Speaking about cattle. قُلْ أَذَّكَرَيْنِ حَرَّمَ أَمِ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. So ask them, has he forbidden the 2 males or 2 females? So is it really the fabrications that they've gone to, the level that they've gone to? Allah is now being very sarcastic with them. So is it the 2 males that are haram, or is it the 2 females that are haram? أَمَّا اشْتَمَلَتْ عَلَيْهِ أَرْحَامُ الْأُنْثَيْنِ. Or that which the womb of the 2 females contain. نَبِّئُونِي بِعِلْمٍ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Please tell us with knowledge if you really know. وَمِنَ الْإِبْلِ اثْنَيْنِ وَمِنَ الْبَقَرِ اثْنَيْنِ. So there's a pair of camels and there's a pair of cows. قُلْ أَذَّكَرَيْنِ حَرَّمَ أَمِ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. So is it the 2 males that he has forbidden or the 2 females? أَمَّا اشْتَمَلَتْ عَلَيْهِ أَرْحَامُ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. Or the wombs of the 2 females, what that contains, is that what is forbidden? أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ وَصَّاكُمُ اللَّهُ بِهَذَا. Were you there when Allah was commanding all of this? The precision with which you are delineating all of these prohibitions. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Who is more zalim? Who is more unjust than the one who invents a lie against Allah, declaring something to be haram or mandatory? It's a big deal. Big deal. Be very careful. لِيُضِلَّ النَّاسَ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. To mislead people without knowledge. the level of the degree of conviction, of soundness of knowledge that is required for these proclamations, it has to be very, very sound, as close to foolproof as you can humanly get. Inna Allah la yahdi al-qawm al-zalimin. Definitely Allah is not going to guide the unjust people. قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ فِي مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُهُ. Tell them, I don't find anything in what has been revealed to me, anything forbidden to anyone who wants to eat, إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ مَيْتًا, except that it's dead animal, أو دما مسفوحا, or blood that is spilled, أو لحم خنزير, or flesh of a swine, فإنه رجس. As for all of that is concerned, that is impure. أو فسقا أهل لغير الله به, or that which is slaughtered in the name of anything other than Allah, as an act of disobedience. But if someone is forced by necessity, even there is flexibility, without having any intention of rebellion or transgression, then your Rabb is certainly forgiving and merciful. So the rigidity, the obsessive nature of this religiosity takes away from the maghfirah of Allah, the rahmah of Allah. Those attributes are missing altogether with these kinds of meaningless, rigid observances of ritual. Allah continues to remind, the list of muharramat, very short, and even there, flexibility. Allah is Ghafurur Rahim. Don't make this religion out to be that. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا كُلَّ ذِي ظُفْرٍ. And we forbade for the Jewish people, every animal without undivided hoofs. So how did these defense mechanisms operate in them when they're similarly, despite being people of scripture, following in the ways of the people of shirk? Again, injustice in the society, silence in the name of injustice, guilt that comes from that silence or the actual committing of that injustice. What do you do about that guilt? More and more prohibition, more and more meaningless rituals. There you go. So Allah says, we made that haram for them. Allah takes ownership. If they were going wrong, we let them go wrong further. يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا. He misleads people through fiqh. How about that? He misleads people through Quran. Why not through fiqh? Why not through more and more prohibition? وَمِنَ الْبَقْرِ وَالْغَنَمِ حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ شُحُومُهُمَا. So from cows and sheep, we made the fat impermissible to them. إِلَّا مَا حَمْلَتْ ظُهُورُهُمَا أَوْ الْحَوَايَا أَوْ مَخْتَلَطَ بِعَظْمٍ. Except that which the back or the entrails carry on the mixed with the bones. My God, the complications within the prohibitions. This is allowed, but this of that is disallowed. Of what is disallowed, this is allowed. ذَلِكَ جَزَيْنَاهُمْ بِبَغْيِهِمْ. That was their reward for their rebellion. وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ. And we are indeed true. فَإِن كَذَّبُوكَ. But if they deny you, فَقُلْ رَبُّكُمْ ذُو رَحْمَةٍ وَاسِعَةٍ. Tell them your Rabb is full of mercy. وَلَا يُرَدُّ بَأْسُهُ عَنِ الْقَوْمِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. And his punishment is not going to be averted from the people who are guilty. Because all of what this was in the service of is to hide that jurm, that the mujrimeen could get away. All of these fanciful constructions of these convoluted prohibitions. No, Allah is not going to let them get away. You're not fooling him through all of this. سَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا أَشْرَكْنَا وَلَا آبَاؤُنَا. And the mushrikeen will continue to say, if Allah wanted, we as well as our parents would not have committed the shirk. It's interesting how in the previous couple of ayat, Allah took ownership that when they were getting misled, we misled them even further. And here comes the mushrikeen saying, see, if we did it, Allah let us do it. If Allah let us do it, then you can't do anything without Allah's permission, right? So if Allah let us do it and we did it, that's his sanction. That is his authority. This fatalism is the evidence that they're bringing in. Because we were allowed to, Allah did not send a lightning bolt to kill off the person who did it for the first time. That means it's okay. So there, that's your proof. So they're going to come and they're going to say that we would not have done this shirk if Allah had not wanted us to. We would not have made anything prohibited if Allah did not want us to. كذلك كذب الذين من قبلهم. That is how those before them used to deny. They used to scapegoat Allah. It's his fault. It's not us, it's him. There's so many scapegoats. Allah, Shaitan, he made me do it, he made me do it, he made me. We're innocent. They also had these same stories until our punishment came to them. Then they forgot all of these fabrications and these rationalizations. Then they realized that exactly how much freedom they did have. But they refused to take seriously or responsibly, and they blamed it all on God. Tell them, do you have any knowledge, any real knowledge? If so, produce it before us. Not these rationalizations without evidence. All you're following is conjecture, assumption, knowledge with no, or claims with no knowledge. What standard of knowledge? What standard of truth? وَإِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا تَخْرُصُونَ, and you do nothing but guess. قُلْ فَلِلَّهِ الْحُجَّةُ الْبَالِغَةُ. So tell them, to Allah alone belongs the conclusive argument. فَلَوْ شَاءَ لَهَدَاكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. So if He willed, He would have guided all of you. Again, their argument, their justification for their shirk and their bid'at emanating from fatalism. Allah made us do it. His power, He controls everything. His decisions, if we did it, He made us do it. Allah responds. One thing, when adhab comes, those rationalizations are no good for you. Second thing, there's no real knowledge or evidence that you have to support that claim. Third thing, Allah has given human beings freedom, so much so that even if He really did want to guide everyone, He could have, but He doesn't. He respects human freedom. He respects human beings to make the choices that they have to make. Even if it's in the wrong direction, He lets that go too. He lets them go further down the wrong track for as far as they can possibly go. فَلَوْ شَاءَ لَهَدَاكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. If He wanted, He could have guided all of you. He didn't. قُلْ هَلُمَّ شُهَدَاءَكُمُ الَّذِينَ يَشْهَدُونَ. Ask them to bring their witnesses who will testify أَنَّ اللَّهَ حَرَّمَ هَذَا, that Allah has forbidden this. فَإِنْ شَهِدُوا فَلَا تَشْهَدْ مَعَهُمْ. But if they do testify, do not testify with them. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. Do not follow the desires of those who negate our ayat. So there is this decency that Allah is invoking, that there's people, that level of decency they should have, that if they don't have genuine evidence, then they should not come out and make claims that they do. But if some people do not have that level of decency either, and they actually come forward and start testifying, don't take those people seriously. وَالَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ. Then those who do not believe in the hereafter, وَهُمْ بِرَبِّهِمْ يَعْدِلُونَ, and they equate others to their Rabb. They create equals with Allah. قُلْ تَعَالُوا أَتْلُ مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ. Tell them, come, I will recite what your Rabb has prohibited for you. أَلَّا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, that you do not do shirk with Him. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and that you treat your parents nicely. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُم مِّنْ إِمْلَاقٍ, that you do not kill your children out of poverty. نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ, we provide you and them as well. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ, and do not even go close to immoralities, immodesty, be they manifest or hidden. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ, and do not kill anyone Allah has forbidden, except if it is legal retribution, if it is by law that the punishment has to be given. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ. These are the things He enjoins upon you. How difficult is that? Don't commit shirk, be nice to your parents, don't kill your children, do not commit zina and the things that lead to zina, and do not murder people. Is that too difficult to remember? Do you have to complicate things further than that, more than that? لَذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. These are the things He enjoins upon you so that you use your reason. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا مَالَ الْيَتِيمِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. And the rights of the orphan. Do not come close to the money, to the wealth of an orphan, except in the best possible way, in order to empower them not exploit them حتى يبلغ أشده, until they reach the age of maturity. وأوفوا الكيل والميزان بالقسط, and pay full measure. Weigh justly. In your economic transactions, don't cheat each other. لا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها. We don't put anyone under a burden beyond his capacity. In your economic matters, you shouldn't either. Do not exploit. Your customer is vulnerable to your expertise, and you may end up shortchanging them or taking advantage of them. Be careful there. وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَعْدِلُوا. And when you speak, be just. وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى. Even if it is against a near relative, if you have to give a testimony against someone very close to you, justice. وَبِأَهْدِ اللَّهِ أَوْفُوا. And the covenant of Allah, fulfill it. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. These are the things which He enjoins upon you so that you may remember. So where's this as a priority list in our religious circles? These become the defining features of the group. How about all of this? Where's this? وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا. This is my path, absolutely straight. Tell them straight out. فَاتَّبِعُوهُ, so follow it. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ, and do not follow other ways. فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ, so you will be separated from His way. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That is what Allah enjoins upon you, so that you may save yourselves, so you may attain taqwa. This is the main highway. There's embellishments on the side. There's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but minus this, if a little bit of this and a little bit of that is what has become the main deal, there's a problem. There are serious problems there. So we gave Musa the scripture to complete our favor to those who attain excellence. So the people attaining to do this in the best possible manner. وَتَفْصِيلًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, as well as to explain everything. وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً, and a guidance and a mercy. You will find that whatever has just been listed, you will find corresponding priorities given in the biblical scripture. The 10 Commandments, are they any different? And the main text of what was just in the previous couple of ayat. وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً, and a guidance and a mercy. لَعَلَّهُمْ بِلِقَاءِ رَبِّهِمْ يُؤْمِنُونَ, so that they believe in the meeting of their Rabb. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.